She had been talking around it for 20 minutes before she said the real thing. We had been going through the plan, the platform, the reason this course was so important. And then she stopped and she said, I've been sitting on this for over a year because I hate it. Not, I'm too busy. Not, I don't know how. She could have taught me the strategy. We had built most of it together more than once. She just hated it. And she never once said that out loud as a reason. You're listening to Amplify with Purpose, Business and Life Unlocked. I'm Adette De Beer. This is where we have real conversations about building a business and a life that actually works. No scripts, no fluff, and nothing you'll have to pretend you didn't hear. If you're ready to lead with purpose and deliver with consistency, you're in the right room. Let's get into it. This is what caught my attention. She had 3 explanations for the delay that she had been rotating for a year. The first was time. Isn't that the one we always use? But then she runs a full workload. She delivers it. So time was demonstrably available for anything that she deemed important. The second was knowledge, and that one collapsed the moment that she asked a direct question because she actually answered it in detail. The third was discipline, and that's the one that she had settled on because it was the only one left standing. She had concluded that she was lazy about this one thing, a capable woman delivering everywhere else in her life, quietly carrying the belief that there was a definitive part of her that showed up in exactly one area of her business. That part was very lazy. I want to suggest something else was going on. 12 months of not doing something you are entirely able to do is not a discipline problem. It's information. And she had been throwing it away every time it arrived because the only thing she knew to do with it was feel bad. Now, I can hear the objection because I've had the same one for myself. If we let I don't like it count as a reason, then where does it end? None of us would ever do anything unpleasant again. I get it. And there's something in that. Plenty of the work that builds anything worth happening in business, nobody enjoys doing. But I recently came across something that changed it for me. There is a very large piece of work on procrastination that pulled together nearly 700 correlations from more than 200 separate studies. That is to say that it is a huge body of data. The researcher was asking a simple question. What actually predicts whether a person delays? I think that question is worth asking. Here is the part that I didn't expect. The single strongest thing in the entire data set was conscientiousness. The more conscientious you are, the less you delay. And that relationship was stronger than anything else they had measured. Let's pause there for a moment and recognize what this means for the woman I'm describing. She is conscientious, demonstrably, across every other part of her business. The usual explanation has already been ruled out in her case by her own work record. And then, sitting right up there among the strongest, most consistent predictors is how aversive the task is. How much you dislike it. Sometimes my accent catches me. How much you dislike it. Or in her case, how much she hated it. It's not a footnote and it's not an excuse people give when they have run out of better ones. But one of those things that most reliably predicts whether the work is actually happening at all. Now, I don't want to stretch this further than the research goes. That research was asking what predictably delays things. It wasn't testing whether you should hand a task to someone else And it cannot tell you that. Most of the studies were done on university students rather than women running businesses. I get it. It's correlation, not causation. It describes what travels together rather than what causes it. For me, it's a signal. It's not an instruction. But I do think that that signal is pointing somewhere useful. Your dislike of a task is not noise sitting on top of the real reason. More often than not, it is the real reason. And it's doing considerably more predictive work than the stories that you've built around your character. So how do you tell the difference? Because I'm not arguing that you get to skip everything that you find unpleasant. The distinction I would offer is between an aversion you move through and an aversion you design around. And the test is time. An aversion that you move through is a spike. The difficult conversation you've been putting off for a fortnight, the invoice you hate chasing, it's unpleasant. You do it, it's over, the next one is slightly easier. That one you push through. Pushing through is the right answer. The aversion you design around. Now, that one doesn't behave like that. It doesn't spike. It just sits. It survives. Every new system you build for it, every new season, it gets carried from one plan to the next, from one quarter to the next. It looks exactly the same this January as it looked the January before. It's not something you can try harder at. It's something that you need to stop being the bottleneck on. A fortnight is a mood. A year is a fact about you. And here is why it matters more than you think. The thing that you keep not doing is almost never trivial. It tends to be the work that generates demand, the visibility, the follow-up, the asking. And it's probably not delivery, because delivery has a client attached to it, and won't you know it, clients tend to create deadlines, which means the undone thing is usually the one that fills the pipeline. It's the kind of work that doesn't make a noise. Nobody rings you to find out why they can't find you. There isn't an invoice about the conversation that's never happened. It falls and fails as an absence, which is exactly why you carry it from one year to the next without it ever becoming urgent. Right up until the current work ends and you look up and you realize that the room is empty. The woman I've been describing found this out with a date already in the calendar. She wasn't lazy. She was a year late to a decision that she could have made in an afternoon, and she had spent a year arguing the evidence instead of just using it. So here's what I want you to do this week. And as always, it's simple, so it's manageable. Find the thing. You already know what it is. It arrived in your head about 4 minutes ago, and you moved straight past it, which is worth noting in and of itself. Ask, how long has it been there? Not how busy you've been, how long? Then ask the question that actually moves it. Does it have to be done by me? Not can I do it, because you absolutely can. You're capable. Does it have to be done by me? If the answer is yes, stop planning it. Put it in the diary this week, because it's a spike and spikes are survivable. However, if the answer is no, then your work this week is not the task. Your work is deciding who gets it. And then go start that conversation. I want to come back to where we started, because the part that surprised me was not delegating. That was straightforward. Once she got there was relief. What surprised me, that was straightforward once she got there. What surprised me was the relief and when it arrived. It didn't arrive when the work moved off her desk. It arrived a few minutes earlier when she said the real reason out loud and nobody in the room treated it as an excuse. She had been carrying two things for a year. One of them was a task. The other was a case that she'd been quietly building against herself every single week. And maybe, as you've been listening, one task has come to mind. But perhaps it's bigger than one task. Maybe you see that there are several things sitting and maybe you can see that there are several things that you are Maybe you can see that there are several things sitting with you simply because they've always sat with you. Decisions you keep postponing. Work you can do, but perhaps no longer should. Parts of the business that's been dependent on you because nobody has ever stopped long enough to ask whether they still need to be done. That is some of the work I do in private coaching. We look at what you are building, where the real friction is, what genuinely requires you, and where you may have been the bottleneck in something that's outgrown the way that you originally built it. So if this episode has surfaced more than one stubborn task for you, you can find the details about working with me privately in the show notes. And if this week, and for this week, start with one thing. You're allowed to stop arguing with the evidence. It's been telling you the same thing for a year now. Believe it, and then do something with it. Thank you for spending this time with me. I don't take it for granted. If today's episode moved something for you, please would you do 3 things? Follow the show so you never miss an episode. Leave a quick review. It genuinely helps other purpose-driven women find us. And send this one to the friend who needed to hear it. You know exactly who she is. You'll find me on LinkedIn and Instagram, and the links are in the show notes. And my DMs are always open. Until next time, lead with purpose, deliver with consistency, and go create the impact that outlasts you.